You heard that, right? This meeting is being recorded. Welcome, Dallas.
Hi, Mike. How are you this evening?
I'm good. I got to work outside in my garden for a little bit. And if we're
Wow,
done
that's
before
good.
dark, I'll go work some more, and I bet we will. I love this time of year when it doesn't get dark until my bedtime.
It's a great time of year.
It is. Everything is just growing. The trees are growing.
Yep.
The bugs are flying. It's
Yeah.
like everything you'd want in the world is out there. But the unfortunate thing is it's real tempting to keep working instead of coming in and coming to the Washington County Small Woodland Zoom. That's what I was telling Barrett and Tony during the rehearsal. That's the worry this time of year is 7 o'clock. It looks pretty nice out. And if you've started working, it's hard to stop sometimes.
I've got a sawmill partially completed out there waiting for me to go back to that. So,
all right. Well, you don't want to do that after dark.
I don't think so.
Is this a new one?
Yes.
All right.
As of yesterday.
Sounds like you're be ready for a tour this summer or something, huh?
Well, let's get it put together first.
Yeah.
What kind did you get, Dallas?
Woodland Mills.
Oh yeah, I've heard of those. Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent.
Is it a fixed one, Dallas, or mobile?
I'm sorry?
Is it a fixed sawmill or a mobile one?
It'll be mobile. It's got a trailer under it.
Yeah.
You can get them either way.
Yeah.
Dallas, did you get it because of the price of lumber?
He's going to be rich by the end of the summer.
Planning on retiring.
Yeah, I heard a story once. It was, do you know how to make a small fortune as a sawmiller? Start out with a large fortune.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I have 7 o'clock and I'm the host or the moderator, whatever we call me. So I'm going to kick us off and say welcome to everyone. And as more people come in, they will join us in progress.
From the email.
Because you had it as what, May 4th?
20.
Oh, okay. 2 days ago, there was a reminder sent out. Well, that's nice.
Let me find Ron so I can mute him.
Oh,
Hey, Ron.
Hi, Ron. You heard that. That's as effective as anything else, right? Okay. We're going to get underway here. Welcome, everybody. I'm Mike Clossy, Director of Forestry with the Oregon Forest Resources Institute, and your host tonight on the Washington County chapter of the Small Woodlands Association monthly Zoom. This is a May 26th meeting, and we got a really good meeting in store for you tonight. In a little bit, I'll turn it over to our president, Vic Herrinks, who will talk about all things OSWA statewide, probably get some politics in here. Then I'm going to ask Bonnie Shoemaker to give us an update on at least one summer tour. We'll see if anybody knows anything else about other summer tours. We'll see if there are any other announcements. Then I will introduce Mark Arendt, who was the program person for tonight's meeting. He's on the program committee. And as you know, January through now, we've had a member of the program committee design each meeting. And this meeting tonight was designed by Mark, has 2 parts. Featured content, one is on trail building, featuring Barrett Brown, who I think of as single track, both because of his machine is single track and his email is single track. So I don't know if that's really his company or it's just a cool name, but Barrett will be talking about trail building. Then the second featured content is Tony Pinkham from Columbia River Orienteering. We'll be talking about orienteering on your woodlands. After each one, we'll have some Q&A. And then at the end, we'll do wrap up. And for the Q&A, you can either put it in the chat box or we'll leave during that part of the program, turn your camera on and we'll be able to see you. You can wiggle your fingers or speak up or wait for Mike to call on you. but we'll get to Q&A. So that's the program for tonight. So I'm going to stop sharing it just because I like to see everybody rather than my program, and switch to announcement mode. And we'll turn it over to Vic, our president, to see what we have in the way of announcements and OSWA update. What's up, Vic?
All right. Hey, thanks, Mike. Well, we've been doing a lot of these Zoom meetings, and hopefully this will be the last one. Maybe we can start live streaming our in-person events in the fall. That would be awesome to be able to, have the in-person events and maybe even allow people to see what we're doing virtually as well, and do a little bit of a combo. But I'm definitely looking forward to in-person stuff, tours this summer. Bonnie or Bob, hopefully you can say a few words about what you have planned at your property, and then hopefully late summer we'll be able to get up to the Browns property. So that will be fun, and I'm looking forward to tonight's program. I know it's tough to compete against 65, 70-degree weather this time of year. But I think this is going to be a good one. So thanks, Tony. Thanks, Barrett, for joining tonight and volunteering to speak to us. We really appreciate that. Just a couple of updates. Mike, you kind of oversold OSWA, all things OSWA. The only thing I'm going to touch on from an OSWA standpoint, nothing political, just membership. We had a membership report in the last OSWA meeting. And, membership had as you might expect, the last couple of years have been a little bit tough for membership. Overall, OSWA was just looking at like the last 6 years running, OSWA was around 1,500 members statewide, and then bumped up to 1,700. And then over the last couple of years, we've kind of tailed back to about 1,500. And I think our chapter has actually maintained fairly steady over that time frame at around just over 200 members. So, we need to hopefully turn that around and start adding to OSWA members. It's an important organization for a lot of reasons. So as we think about getting back together, we think about our summer tours. If you have people that you want to invite and recruit, it's certainly a good opportunity to start doing that again. I think we're hoping to do that at a fairly small scale at the Shoemakers, our first one in June, but maybe we'll see how it goes and maybe scale that up later in the year. So that's what's going on with membership. The other thing, there's been a fair bit of activity around Amy Grotta's memorial trail, specifically in the Madison Forest. And I know Bob and Barrett both have been working on that. So thank you guys for that. Is there anybody else here tonight that's been helping out with that trail building initiative? If so, raise your hand and be recognized. Otherwise, I think there will be more opportunities in the future. So, so definitely keep an eye out for that, because I think that'll be a fun project for all of us.
More opportunities. I'm going to sink the hook in a little deeper.
All right, good. Yes, we'll learn a lot about trail building tonight, and I'm sure there's some labor involved, right, Barrett?
Just the fun part, just the fun stuff.
Okay. And the other thing on Amy, and this is really with OSU Extension, is that filling this position in Columbia, Washington counties, Yamhill as well, I believe, has been, their number one priority for a while, and it's still their number one priority. So hopefully soon we will have a new extension agent to represent us and help us. So I think that's all I have for now. Shoemakers, would you like to say a few things about your tour coming up?
Yes, you'll get more detail in the June Forest Forum, but it's going to be, we always used to meet in person on the fourth Tuesday of the month. So it's going to be the fourth Tuesday in June, June 22nd. It's a twilight walking tour from 6 to 8 p.m. So we're doing it, kind of slowly. There'll be no food, no drinks. You can bring your own, but there won't be any, communal stuff. You must pre-register, and whatever the rules are at that time, we will be following the rules. So, and we're going to have 4 different things to look at. We've done a pretty large pre-commercial thinning with a grant for part of the costs from NRCS. So that's going to be part of it. There's a fire access safety thing that Mark Arndt's going to help us with, because we're neighbors, but not that you can just drive to, but our properties do butt up against each other. So was some fire type concerns that we addressed as neighbors. So Mark will talk about that. And some phenology, which is, the change of plants during the seasons. And I've signed up with this Oregon season tracker, which is really fun. You pick out a couple of plants that they're interested in, and then you just record weekly what's happening with them. So that, just talk a little bit about that. And then Bob's going to hang out down by the equipment, because all woodland people like to look at equipment. And the equipment's down by the barn, and we have horses and sheep and pigs and chickens, if anybody wants to look at those. So just kind of a really fun time to get together, but also some education, which we always do.
All right, sounds good. Looking forward to it. Any other general announcements from anybody that's on right now? Any OSWA political updates? I wasn't ready to touch on that, but Mike, you've got something?
Not political, that's for sure. I don't do politics, as you know. But I wanted, Kathy and I talked a little bit earlier that we should make sure that we announce the OSWA Tree Farm Family Forest Conference. That's going to be virtually in July sometime. And Kathy knows the dates and I know what it's about. So what's the date, Kathy?
July 23rd.
July 23rd, and it'll be virtual online. And the theme is based on the tree farm symbol: wood, water, wildlife, recreation on your working forest. And it's going to be virtual, and it's going to be good. And Julie Woodward is on the committee, and OFRI is a sponsor. So that's what I know about that. Then the second half of it is the Tree Farmer of the Year Tour. Oh, looks like Tony has something to say. His hand's up. Tony or Mary, do you guys have something to say about that?
When you're done, done there.
Good. So the other half is the Tree Farm of the Year Tour, and it's going to be at Gordon and Gail Culbertson's Tree Farm in Lane County. And they were the 2019 Tree Farmers of the Year and didn't get to have the tour last year. And it's August, what's the date, Kathy, for that one?
21st.
August 21st. And the information is on the OSWA website, which is oswa.org. And I know that Amy's taken registrations, and both of those are going to be really good. So wanted to make sure you knew about those. If you don't, you do now. And Mary, you have an announcement.
Yeah, just wanted to thank whoever put the article in the Forest Forum about the Western red cedar dying. So we have several Western red cedar that are dying. So I put together a little report and I sent it to Christine Buell, and she returned the contact, and she's coming out tomorrow to take some samples of not only the dead red cedar, but also the dying. And So she'll be monitoring those as well as we will. But I just want to thank whoever put that in there. Oh, yeah, it was yeah, great response. And so I'm hoping we can find out why we have so many that are dying off. So thank you.
I know Dave Shaw is also very interested in it. I know Christine will share with him. She's going more from the bug side. He's going from the disease side.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Anything else for the good of the order? Bonnie, you look like you wanted to say something. Nope.
Okay, great. Well, I just, most of you probably know Mike is retiring at the end of June, right, Mike?
June 30th.
June 30th, the days are counting. So, you know, I think the first time I met Mike was at the Doomers Tree Farmer of the Year tour. You were manning the lightning tree, right? I think we were calling it a lightning tree, and on the border there with Stimson's property. And I just remember, you know, I remember that and remember you just being, you know, so knowledgeable and having so much information to share. And just, you know, you really struck me as an educator. And now, you know, I see that you're a master facilitator. So Mike, I just really appreciate what you've done for Washington County. And I'm sure, you know, with the broader group here, you go way back, and there are probably, you know, lots and lots of things that people could call out and say, thank you, Mike, for what you've done for us. So, and I think John and Kathy, did you have something to say as well?
Yeah, we wanted to thank Mike, especially for his work these past few months, helping us keep the band together, as it were. And we have a small gift for you. And if you would allow Kathy to share her screen.
Sure. Oh, sweet.
To see what we put together here for you. So it's a screenshot from each of the meetings, and helps to tell the tale. So if you get lonely for us and for these Zoom meetings, you can pull out. We're gonna send you a poster of this.
Wow.
You can pull that out and think of us fondly, hopefully, in your retirement.
Well, that is really sweet. Thank you very much. Very creative.
Oh, well,
It's been really fun. So I got to say, as you near retirement, especially with the organization that you've been with for a long time, and, you know, been doing this forestry education stuff, this is 40 years for me, all together with my OSU work, my Siletz work, and my OFRI work. And so I'm writing like my farewell to arms kind of speech. And it's been kind of fun. So it will be in the next OFRI newsletter. Will be the shortened version of it, which is, they only let me have 250 words, which isn't enough. So I have the longer version will be on the OFRI blog, posted sometime next month. But it really has been, you know, what a fun way to spend a career, to help people learn about forests and to kind of be a spokesperson for forests. I love working with landowners. I also like working with the public. And you know, I really appreciate when you have tough times like we've been having this year, to have the support that we've had from the woodland community is really, really nice. So thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Mike.
And thank you for remembering me. Almost brings a tear to my eye. But it's hay fever season, so I get a lot of tears these days. Well, I'm going to move us into the program, and a picture that you don't see is Mark Arendt, because Mark is cameraless, but he's not voiceless. So Mark is, as I said earlier, our program person for tonight, and he's going to introduce Barrett, and then Barrett will take it away. And one of the suggestions I would have is during the talk, if you all would turn your cameras off, then that gives more space for the picture and for Barrett's picture. And then when we go to the Q&A, you can turn them back on. So I'll ask Barrett to leave his on and to turn his sound on. And Mark, introduce Barrett. Boy, you guys are so compliant today. Except for even Bill's compliant. Golly, thank you. Take it.
Great. Thank you, Mike. Welcome, everyone. I'm really excited about tonight's presenters. Our first speaker, Barrett Brown, obvious to most here, is a fellow Washington County Small Woodlands Association member. I met Barrett face to face for the first time a few months ago on my property. By chance, the NRCS, their local office, had recommended I contact Barrett. I didn't connect the dots that this was the same Barrett who was a Washington County Small Woodlands member, for assistance with some road and trail challenges I had on my property. You know, Barrett was kind enough to take the time one weekend to come out on site to offer some guidance. You know, essentially his advice and feedback was just fantastic. You know, his eagerness to teach me and just his experience, you know, essentially just, it was a perfect fit for tonight's theme of alternate uses. And I think it's fun on the tree farm. Reading briefly from his background submission, Barrett has consulted, planned, and constructed trails for BLM, the Forest Service, state forests, and private landowners. Barrett also has invented a purpose-built machine for constructing and maintaining single-track trails for hiking, mountain biking, and motorcycling. Without further delay, Barrett, the time is yours to present on the art and science of trail building.
Oh, well, thanks for that, Mark. We had a great time at your place, and really happy to talk for a little bit, although it's never talked about trails on a Zoom meeting where there's so much information to share, and having not really close contact with everybody's body language to see who's napping or who's who is nodding. It's a challenge. I think I'm glad this will be one of the last Washington County Woodlands small woodlands Zoom meetings. But at any rate, we had a good time out at Mark's place talking about trails, and in his case, also a little bit about roads, which a lot of our forest roads almost perform like trails. They're kind of to bed. They're not real transportation infrastructure day after day. A lot of times they're maybe future haul routes, but you know, we talked a little bit about the ways you can design these things to work with the environment as opposed to kind of fighting nature and fighting rain and natural forces. And that was a good time. So I'll share my screen a little bit just to run a few photos as background noise while I talk. I will say, you know, the topic, you know, I can talk for a long time about this, and, you know, just an entry level kind of trail building design course that I might do would take a whole day of just classroom time, and then a whole day or two out in the field, and that close to 24 hours of time just to kind of get started. So we're not going to do that now. Lucky for you. But let me get my screen shared here. Have we got our introductory slide up here?
Yes, it looks great.
Oh, very good, thanks. But what I will do is just show you a couple of books that would go some ways in giving you some technical background if you're interested in starting to absorb some of the technical information about how to avoid mistakes. If you're a kind of a tech person with interested in specifications, this is one good way to start. It's an old book. It's not, I think it's been around for almost 10 years, but it's still a real good basic guide put together by IMBA, the International Mountain Biking Association. And, you know, the information in here applies to trails of all kinds. You'll recognize kind of the mountain bike specific language here and there, but the science and the art and the technology is the same no matter what you're after. Another good one is this Natural Surface Trails by Design. This particular book, but was book one, I think, is what we're looking at here. Talks about the human side and the physical part of starting the design process around the actual trail user and their values. This is a picture of CCC crew in the 30s. Trails built like this around the world for as long as there have been people in the world, I think. This CCC crew is building in the Gifford Pinchot National Forest. And you'll still see a lot of their work on parts of the Pacific Crest Trail and around Timberline Lodge, Gifford Pinchot National Forest, all over the country. And as cool as some of their handiwork is, and you know, it's unmatched as far, you know, in its kind of craftsmanship. From a trail design standpoint, we've come a long way. So a lot of these trails were built in a way that turned out to be a little hard to maintain, and not. We've learned a lot since then. This is another look at a hand-built trail. This is in Alpine, New Zealand, and that's an actual sign that's on this trail. This was a project that I actually turned down because the government there and the folks on the steering committee wanted, this is exactly what they wanted, was this, they wanted this kind of trail constructed. And, you know, I'm not a fan because it's not sustainable. You can see ahead there of this hiker. He's probably going to be using his hands to stay on the trail here in a little bit. And, you know, we need to think of trails as a long-term infrastructure investment in the land. So they need to be thoughtful about just how they'll hold up over time, how sustainable they are. I do like this because I'm a fan of exposure. It's called a little bit of a risky adventure trail, but it's got to last. And ask yourself, you know, in 20 years, say 20 years from now, I'll be around 80. Am I going to be fit enough to go out with hand tools and try and keep this thing maintained? You know, I don't think so. So I talked about exposure, and that's what differentiates a trail from a road, from a pure transportation experience, getting from point A to point B. You know, if all you wanted to do was go for a walk, you could go walk around the mall, or you could go walk on what technically is a trail, say the Tom McCall Waterfront Park in Portland. But what we're trying to provide is a kind of a recreation experience, and that's why you engineer a little bit of exposure. And that doesn't mean it's literally life-threatening or literally dangerous, but you just want to feel just a tiny bit of adrenaline as you're walking and looking, whether you brush right next to a tree with your shoulder, or you look off the edge of the trail and get your heart rate up just a little bit, just appreciating that you're in nature. You're not just out for a walk on a treadmill. You're on a bit of an adventure. along with exposure, we want to make sure we're designing in a little bit of meander and mystery. So again, we're not just going for a walk. We can't, when you look off in the horizon, you can't really see where you're going to be in 10 minutes because that's just boring. You know, you really want to be meandering your way through the forest, and you want to leave sight lines blocked a little bit. So as you're walking, you're kind of wondering what's going to be around the next corner. What's the next view I need to take in? What new critters am I going to come across around this blind corner? Same here. This is a project I did in the Tillamook State Forest. Something we'll get to a little bit later. Well, let me back up all the way to the introduction. I'm not a professional trail builder, nor do I build trail machines anymore. I have done that work. So I'm not talking to you all to sell you trail building services or machines. That's something I don't do anymore. But I might again someday, but I'm not selling anything today. So now going forward, looking at this trail, we see we've got a little bit of that meander, a little bit of mystery about what's around the next corner. But you also see undulations in the trail here that are grade reversals. This is important, especially where we live, where we're always in basically the water management business. And this we talked a lot about on Mark's property with regard to forest roads. The point here is to make it interesting as a trail, so it's got some undulations up and down, but these grade reversals also basically break up the watershed of this trail and the road. So you can see, I don't know if you can see my mouse here, but each of these grade reversals creates a whole new watershed. If this was a contour trail following the contour and gradually going downhill as this trail is, the entire length of that trail is a watershed. And so you're collecting and carrying water that you've got to now deal with as a trail owner. You know, once it's on the ground, now you've got to maintain and kind of mitigate the damage from all that water flow. So by having these grade reversals strategically placed, you know, and this all is part of an integrated design discussion about climate, soils, slope, all those issues. We engineer these grade reversals so our watersheds are basically small, little pieces at a time. So you never really accumulate much water to carry and then get rid of. Again, another good look at this meander, kind of a mystery. This is a hiking trail in Payson Forest in Arizona. This is that meander and the mystery plus exposure, which feels like risk. Now, everybody's risk tolerance and risk attraction to risk is different. So some would see this and actually not see very much risk, and some see this as very, very dangerous and scary. But you know, that's why, you know, the first part of the kind of trail design process is getting really familiar with the trail user, who's going to be on that trail, what are their goals, what's their experience over time. A different kind of exposure. This a picture I just had to throw in from Steamboat Springs, Colorado. This I got started on this trail with a mountain bike club there. We moved the machine in, parked it at the end of the day just to the move in, and left and came back the next day. And this is what a bear did to the trail machine overnight. So if you can see my mouse here, these are bear paw prints on the side of the machine. So it's pretty cool. It's cool knowing we weren't there at the time, but this is a bit of a side note when it comes to trail technology, but this is a trail I did in the West Lynn, the White Oak Savannah project. I worked on this with the Northwest Trail Alliance, a mountain bike organization in the metro area. And what's happening here was it was a big community event that came in after I had roughed in this trail. And then the entire community was involved. Supporters of this park and this project were involved in just kind of dressing it up, making it look really, really nice, smoothing it out and shaping it. And it's super rewarding. It's not, you're not doing the extremely grueling, backbreaking work of constructing the bench, but these folks on this particular day were all super excited. There were a bunch of kids that had a great time because when you, in a very short order, you get some pretty rewarding work. And this is what we hope to do on Amy's trail. So Dave and I worked with OSU to lay this out earlier, and I've been out there this week roughing it in. So I'm maybe 2/3 of the way along, and this is where we'll really appreciate having some volunteers out to do this hand finish work and leave behind a beautiful trail in Amy's name. So this is another look at grade reversals. This is in Willits, Humboldt County, California. Again, we no longer use water bars, absolutely never use water bars building a trail, and hopefully you're never using them building forest roads either. Water bars are a man-made piece of infrastructure that's designed to try and stop nature's forces. You're basically, nature is going to pound against that water bar like a hammer a little bit every raindrop, and while you're gone, that will fail. And there's no sense designing things that where you're in conflict with forces of nature. Better to just break up your watersheds into small sections like this and have the thing hold up all on its own. I did get to the end. So there we are. Hopefully I've left a little bit of time for some questions. What do you think, Mike?
We do. So I'd ask people to turn on their cameras now. And I have one, Barrett. I do a lot of hiking, not any trail building, nothing work, but just enjoying. And to me, one of the hardest things hiking in Oregon is we have 6 months of mud and 6 months of dust.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mind the dust so much, but hiking a trail that just is full of mud is really, really hard. So is that something you can design to not have the water collect, or do you have surfacing in areas? I mean, typically, and I mostly hike public trails and there's no maintenance dollars there. So how do we avoid that?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Great
to me,
question.
that's the biggest thing in Oregon is how do we hike without so much mud?
Yeah, great question. Here in our part of the world, there are soil types that are not suitable to wet weather use, at least on a high level. On our own family forests, that's not really a problem, but most of the time, however, what you're experiencing there is bad trail design. With just the right amount of careful engineering, you're shedding water all the time, and your maintenance load is really low. If as soon as you start making design mistakes, the maintenance load goes way up, and what that means is it doesn't get done. And there are trails in Forest Park, for example, that are notorious for basically like a muddy cattle drive if you're out there. And those were some early design trails, like the CCC built trails that didn't have really modern science in the way they were laid out. And side note, their management regime makes it very difficult to fix those design flaws, because they're not particularly amenable to correcting some of those mistakes by rerouting trails. So let's be thankful we control our own tree farms, and we can put trails right where they belong.
So when you talk design, I think of road design with computer models and maps and pretty detailed design. And I think of the CCC trails, and they're like built on the seat of the cat, right? Whereas they didn't even have cats. It was just the guys with the shovels. So when you design a trail, you have drawings and all of that in advance?
Hopefully not, because of the cost. And here's why. And you do get into that with Forest Service projects occasionally. Fortunately, they've evolved quite a ways from that, but because you can't really tell, let me set the context here. The trail's supposed to, hopefully it's fitting into nature as opposed to making nature fit the trail. So it's really hard to tell where that trail needs to be until you start moving organic material out of the way, taking ferns out and logs, and now all of a sudden your projected alignment may be completely wrong. For example, we laid out this trail, Amy's trail, and when I'm out there with the machine today, there were several places where I completely changed direction once I started constructing and realizing the soil was telling me different things than I could see from above the vegetative layer. So there won't be drawings, but there's a strategic way of building in your objectives from your start and finish points, things that are called positive and negative control points. So, your starting position frequently, that's a known, and that's called a positive control point. You want to be there. And the negative control point would be maybe a wet area or a cliff or something that you need to avoid, sensitive area, a bird's nest, raptor nest, for example. So you accumulate all these positive and negative control points and start to construct a layout with the trail user or landowner, and it's really organic as opposed to an engineered and drawn project.
Okay, I asked my two questions. I'm happy with that.
That said, what you're getting at does exist in the form of a set of objectives, conditions, restraints, a narrative. For example, there might be a note, we don't want to have any grade steeper than 12%, for example, or we want this trail tread to be a certain width, at all times, or those kind of things. So there's plenty of that's involved. But
good. So it's really an art as much as a science, it sounds like.
Yeah, it's a very organic. And when I describe this, the trail builder is a bit of an artist, but his medium isn't necessarily the ground. The medium is actually your adrenaline, your heart rate, your sense, the adventure you feel. So the trail builder is painting an experience within you, hopefully. And the trail builder knows, okay, the trail user right here is going to have a kind of a high heart rate because a little bit of a climb. There's some adrenaline because I just moved over next to this rock ledge. And that's the artistry that I get the most out of anyway.
So if I'm hiking along and I see a sign that says there's an auto defibrillator unit nearby, I should know that's an exciting part of the trip. All right, other questions?
What is the first step in, I mean, do you use surveyor paint once you have a general idea where the starting and ending point is, or how do you mark what you think you're going to do?
Mm-hmm. Well, that are two, typically folks use what are called pin flags. You see them in the landscape industry, but the trail builders use a pin flag. It's a 18 to 24 inch piece of wire with a little flag at the top. And some folks flag the proposed center line. Some folks flag the upper edge of the cut bank on the slope. And if it's more general in nature, and if you have a lot of confidence in how things are going to go, you can just hang flagging ribbon in the forest. But even at that, there's typically pin flags involved.
Ron.
How useful is corduroy wood laid crossways across the trail in order to maybe drain water through it or have a little less mud as you step on it?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, trail hardening, I just cut my answer short to Mike about wet areas. Trail hardening can take several forms. And corduroy, that's, my main road, Dairy Creek Road used to be a corduroy road before they paved and graveled out here. So it's something that is used. It's not used much anymore because everything you carry into the trail project, everything you carry into the forest is now something you have to maintain, something that nature is going to try and fight. So if you're lucky to have cedar, locust, something that lasts a really long time, you'll have some better luck. But hopefully, if there's a wet area, typically now what we call it, build a turnpike, where you'll use rock and build up a bit of a prism of rock, elevated rock, sometimes contained by pressure treated wood or rot resistant wood, and cart in rock. And on trails, use powered power carriers like a power wheelbarrow to bring rock into those areas, if there's no way to avoid them, which is the first choice. I'll say Mark had a good example in a forest road where that road had just unexpectedly intersected or unearthed a bit of an artesian seep, a spring, and there was no sign of water anywhere, but where that road cut came through, he had water appear, and it's a really difficult clay soil situation right there. And what I prescribed to him was to actually build a large French drain across the road. He was lucky to have some slope there that he could work with, and just cover that over with clay again, so it'd be invisible, but to get that seep out from the road surface.
Bonnie.
Yes, Barrett, I was really glad to hear you talk about meandering roads, because they're trails. We built a trail tent to connect two parts of our property, and Bob even made a sign. It's called Wiggle Road.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you'll see that if you come out on the end of June for our Twilight tour.
That's great.
Well, one of the things I've noticed, again, I hike a lot on public lands, and with COVID, there are a lot of other people out in the woods, more than I've seen in a long time. And having meander really helps you separate yourself from the other people. You know, it's one thing to say line of sight for the wildlife, which is great, but it's really nice to hike a lot and not see other people. And a well-designed trail, I think you can do that.
Yep.
All right, we've probably got time for one or two more questions if there are some. But if not, we'll move on. Any last words you want to share with us, Barrett? This is really good information. And I can't wait to come to your tree farm and see it live.
Oh, sure. I'll just say that most of the longer discussion about technology, and it's in our area, it's mainly about water management. The same principles apply to road construction. You know, the more you just apply these theories to your forest roads, the easier they'll be to maintain. The longer they'll last, and just keep that in mind.
All right.
Can I say one more
One
thing?
more thing, Bonnie.
I just want to kind of put a big thank you to Barrett for the work he's doing on Amy's Trail at Madison Forest. And I guess to ask you if the kind of, we went out there, I forget how long ago, to kind of walk where the trail might go. Did that work pretty good as far as the grade and such?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, there were, you know, a couple of changes. You know, when you're doing that first flag line, you end up out at a certain grade, and you look up the hill and realize, you know, I wish we were up there, because there's some beautiful cedar trees, for example. So now you've got to back up and reset your line so you end up there. And there were a couple of those, but we generally followed that same route. It's beautiful, and we were also able to hit the various plot study locations that were in the region there. So the school will be using the trail for, you know, educational access to those test plots. So it's really going to be great.
Yeah, and just everybody watch for more information about, we're thinking September to have the final grooming of the trail that probably some of us older folks can actually do. And so it'll be a real celebration.
Fantastic. I know this means a lot to Amy's family. So thank you all for that. Thank you, Barrett. Great show. I'm going to ask you all to turn your cameras off again, except for Tony. And Mark, if you would introduce Tony.
Great. Thanks, Mike. And thanks, Barrett, for your presentation. Our second speaker, Tony Pinkham, is the president of the Columbia River Orienteering Club and has 30+ years experience with orienteering in the US, Canada, and Northern Europe. Similar to Barrett, I met Tony by chance and learned of his skills while trying to address an issue on my property. I met Tony over an online post where he was offering fill. It was like basically cement and basalt chunks for free. You know, just someone had to come and get it. And, you know, over several trips, it took me several trips of manually loading these chunks, and even Tony had to help me. I learned of his passion for the sport of orienteering, which was totally foreign to me. The skills, the map reading, the navigating, and the activities associated with this sport just had seemed to me to also fit well with tonight's theme. I'm going to read briefly from his background submission. Tony has directed numerous orienteering events, including multi-day US skiing orienteering championships and the first ski orienteering World Cup event held outside of Europe. Tony, the time is yours to present on the sport of orienteering.
Okay, thank you. And by the way, I very much enjoyed the earlier talk that Barrett gave. I've done some trail work, and I found it very interesting. Let me see. I need to see if this, here we go.
Looks great. Hit play,
And
upper right.
play.
There you go.
There we go. Do you see that okay?
It hasn't started playing yet. Hit play again.
Let's see.
I have a thing that says take remote control.
I do have that.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And thank you everybody for your patience. Yes, so I represent an orienteering club that puts on navigation events in Oregon and Southern Washington. A few years ago, I used to be in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I was there for many years working with the club that was there. Now, what we have is this sport. Basically, we're running around the woods looking for flags like the one you see in the middle of the screen. I'll give you a little bit, I'll go into a little bit more. Oh, I am not able to.
Okay. Try now.
There we go. Okay. So what I'll be talking about is, what is orienteering? I'll give you a basic idea of where orienteering is today, give you a little description of the club that I belong to. Then I'll get into more of a discussion of things that concern you, like what are we looking for in the way of woodlands? What do we provide for our events? What arrangements do we make with you? What environmental considerations are there? And I'll also give you an example of one of the small woodlands that we do use for someone who's part of your organization. I don't see him in attendance today. And then I'll provide you some information sources so that you can go after more information if you're interested. So how about the next slide?
Okay. It's being slow.
Okay, so with orienteering, this is a navigation sport. You get a map like the one that you see on the screen, and it will have a start triangle and it will have a finish double circle and a bunch of circles in between. And you have to visit each one of those circles, get there any way you can. And when you get there, you're going to see a flag like you saw on the very first screen. And we have a way of punching in so that we get the time that you arrive at that flag, and then you run off to, or walk, I'd say actually more than half of our people walk, go off to the next control. And you go from one to the next, all the way to the finish. And of course, the person who does it in the least amount of time wins. But a lot of us say that anyone who gets out and just does this and gets out in the woods wins anyway. It's all a matter of perspective, I guess. At any rate, we do a lot of this in wilderness areas, but we also do it in urban areas. We have different formats for this. We do it for runners and hikers. We do it for skiers. We do it for mountain bikers. We even do it for amateur radio users. And we have a special version for disabled people who cannot compete going from place to place, but there's another way that they get to compete. We also have multiple courses at each one of our events. So we have, for the beginners, we keep them pretty much on trails. And then as they progress along in their skills, we start taking them off of trails and have them follow other linear features such as creeks, power lines, fences, whatever is sort of linear like a trail. And then we have people who have begun to get ready to get off the trail. So we have intermediate courses where they do short navigation off of the trail. And then finally, we have our advanced courses, which are the tough ones. You have to, you pretty much are running off trail from place to place, and you have to navigate your way. Our competitions, we have 30 to 60 people at our events. If we get a wilderness site, such as maybe one of your farms, we might get 60 or more people, because those would be very, very popular. We also do some multi-day events, such as at the end of July and beginning of August, we're going to have about 4 or 5 days down in Bend, where we have each day is a different competition. And some clubs, such as the one I came from, immediately after that 4 or 5 day event, they're having something down in the Lake Tahoe area that goes on for like a week and a half. So it's just one event after another, and a lot of people travel to those events. Okay, let's go to the next screen. So this is a growing sport in the US. It's very popular in Europe and Asia. When I was orienteering in Sweden, I would orienteer during the day at an event that had 20,000 people. They're starting around the clock because they only have like 2 or 3 hours of nighttime there at that time of year. And you get home and you turn on the TV and the competition is on the TV. So it's a very well-known sport. It's a school sport. A lot of people do it. In the US, it's relatively unknown. It's growing quite fast, but it's not that well known at this point. There are regional and national championships, and when we get a really good venue, some of the clubs will decide to, they'll put in a bid for doing a regional or national championship on really good terrain that offers really good navigational challenges. And I'm kind of looking for things of that sort. Now, the small properties that you have, which I understand are 80 acres or less, probably are not quite the size that we're looking for the major events. On the other hand, the one place that we do use is bordering up against some properties that have been bought by the water department, and all of a sudden we have the ability to expand beyond that. So there are all sorts of possibilities. We also can do smaller events that are called sprints. So they cover a very small area, but people go pretty fast from place to place. So we can use small, we can use large areas. Our participants, very, very diverse. Typically it's 7 years and older, because that's about the age when children gain their spatial abilities. I got into the sport when I was in my 30s because I saw a bunch of people what were my age now and older, people in their 80s participating in this sport. And I thought, okay, finally, here's a sport I can do for the rest of my life. And it has turned out that way. I'm loving it for that. Let's go on to the next slide. Oh, by the way, the woman in the photo, our club has some pretty strong female runners. This is Allison Crocker. She is the fastest woman orienteer in the United States. And she competes internationally. This is a photo, I think, from Sweden. And she is placed as high as number 7 or 7th in the world, usually around 15th or 20th. So we have some pretty strong women in our club. The Columbia River Orienteering Club. So we put on competitions in the Portland metro area, the Columbia River Gorge, Willamette Valley, Mount Hood area, and Bend. But we're also expanding. So, wherever we can find places that provide interesting navigation and give people a chance to get outdoors, we love to map those areas and have a competition there. And I'm certainly always on the lookout for woodland areas. And they're very popular with our competitors. Our club is a rather small club. When I joined about 3 years ago, we had about 80 people, and all of a sudden, because of COVID, we're over 100 and growing pretty fast, mainly because it's a sport that you can do on your own. And a lot of people are looking for something that they can do outdoors, get their exercise, have an adventure, and yet not be around a whole bunch of other people when you don't need to be around them. Let's go on to the next one. So what are we looking for? A big thing that we're looking for are woodland venues, mostly forested areas, varying terrain, lots of hills, valleys, anything that's runnable. One problem we do have in the Portland area is a lot of the woodland areas that are public parks are filled with blackberry, and it's a little hard to run through those areas. So our better places are further away from the metro area. Okay, so we're looking for places that have trails or no trails. Basically, trails are great for beginner courses, but areas that have off-trail navigation potential, that's great for the advanced courses. Trails are also great if there's a complex network of trails. They're great for sprint events because people get really confused from their trails going all over the place, and they have to be very careful of their navigation. But we're also looking for places that can accommodate 30 to 60 people and their cars for up to 6 hours, 1 day a year for a number of years. So with the car issue is there's got to be a place to park, but we also have a safety issue there. We have a lot of people with catalytic converters and we don't want to start any fires. But if there are other places, if the property does not have places for people to park or has limited parking, we can always encourage people to ride share. If there are places outside the property where people can park safely, we can do that, and people can either walk in or we can take a car and just carpool people in. Let's go on to the next one. So what do we provide? We actually do the mapping. We make it from LiDAR data, satellite photos, and then finally we go out there and do some field work for a few days. And the LiDAR data is incredibly complete, showing little bumps, and all of a sudden we find out, okay, the bump could be a big boulder, it could be a tree stump, it could be all sorts of things. But the field work, we go out there and we put all those features in, because those features become control features. Basically, people are going to be going a long ways, and then they're going to be looking for a boulder, or they're going to be looking for a tree stump or a fallen tree with a rootstock. Anyway, we do all the mapping. We also set up the event. Before each event, if we're using a property over multiple years, before each event, we send out the course setter to just check and see if there's anything that has to change on the map. The course setter sets the controls, and he usually puts a little ribbon where each control is going to go. And then on the event day, we set up the start and finish areas, and we set up the controls. And the controls are little, they're about 2 inches by 3 inches or 4 inches boxes that people can put a little finger stick into to register that they've been there. And there's a little flag that hangs underneath it. At the end of the day, after the competition is over, we clean up, and our goal is to leave no trace of the event. There might be a few grassy areas that have the grass tromped down a bit, but that usually comes right back. And the other thing about this sport is that people usually take different routes to wherever they're headed. So you don't have big trails made by people running through the woods. We provide the volunteers. That's for the event management, parking control, and all the event functions. Also, if sanitation facilities are needed, we provide them. So, if we need to, we'll bring a porta potty out there and we'll take it out. We also provide insurance, which is provided through Orienteering USA, which is the US Federation for Orienteering. And of course, fees, something that we negotiate with you. Let's go on to the next slide. Okay, arrangements that we make with you. Of course, we make the map. And then we arrange to have 1 to 3 people come out to just complete the map, just to be sure that everything is right. For each competition, we work out a date with you that would be good. We schedule access for, again, 1 to 3 course setters. Typically, it's just 1, but sometimes it's a couple, to come out, and they put ribbons out, and they will also eventually put out control boxes with the flags on a stake, or they can be tied to a tree, or whatever works best for you. We schedule a review meeting to discuss the event, insurance, the fees, and any requirements that you have. If you have areas you don't want people to go into, we discuss how we're going to keep people out of there. And that could be even putting a ribbon across the whole thing, a long ribbon, just keep people out of that area. We certainly mark the maps as that area is forbidden. For the competition day, we require usually about 12 hours. That's about 3 hours to set up, 6 hours of competition, and then 3 hours of cleanup. Let's go on to the next slide. So the big thing for us are the environmental considerations. We don't want to leave any trace that we've been there. So our goal is to not change anything in your area. The wildlife, we rarely have a problem with that because our events are so small. But sometimes I know the really large events in Europe, they have thousands of people. The wildlife does leave the area for good reason. And the studies have shown that the wildlife comes back a day or 2 after the event and things have quieted down. Again, sanitation facilities, we provide that if needed. As for food and water, the orienteers have to bring their own. And they have to clean up after themselves, and they remove their trash. International studies that I have, there are 2 of them. And one of them I think was done in the UK, and the other one, as I recall, in Sweden. But I could have that mistaken. In both cases, they show that basically there's no change to the environment after a competition. And their competitions are far bigger than ours. Typically, our local competitions get up to maybe 60 people. The ones in Europe, you're talking about several hundred, sometimes over 1,000, and the really big ones, they get up to thousands of people. But ours are typically pretty small. The other thing is, now this is kind of an odd little deal, but because we go into all sorts of areas of the land that we're using, sometimes we find things that the land managers don't know about. So we let them know about that. The first time I made a cave or made a map, I discovered a cave, and the ranger got a copy of the map and he was looking all over it and he said, "What's this symbol?" And I said, "Well, that's for a cave." He says, "There's no cave out there." And I said, "Yes, there is." He came back on the second day of competition. We had a 2-day competition then. He said, "There was a cave out there." And I said, "Yeah, and there's a homeless camp inside." And he said, "Yes, and we removed it." There are various things that do pop up. And I think in your small properties, you'll pretty much know everything that's out there. But certainly in the larger ones, we sometimes run into pot farms or a number of other things, and we let the managers know about them, and then they get to do whatever they think is appropriate. Let's go on to the next one. Okay, so this is the Wenzel Farm. This is one of the small woodland farms down just off of Farmington Road in the southwest Beaverton area. 75 acres. It's mostly usable in early spring, but some of the cleared areas are used for growing grains. They're leased out at that time. So mid to late spring, those areas can't be used. And we can't use it in the summer because there's a high fire danger and they don't want to have cars coming in. If there's a way we can bring people in without cars, we can use it. But so we're using this in early spring typically. But you can talk to Ken and Debbie Wetzel, and see how things go with them working with us. We're pretty excited about this farm, even though it's a little on the small side, and even if we can only use a little over half of it sometimes. The area to the north and the area to the east is actually either owned or will soon be owned by the water district or the water company. I'm not too sure which it is here, that's running a water line through the area. And so they've bought up the neighboring properties. And there's a chance that we could expand our courses and go into those areas. So it brings up some interesting possibilities. Let's go on to the next one. So basically, our idea is that everybody should win with our events. The competitors get a great adventure with some training and competition. A lot of them are training to go to events overseas or elsewhere in the United States. So the more we can get them out into wilderness areas, the better their training. Our club gets a new map, and hopefully we can use that for a number of years. And you get some income. And we also hope that you share what you're doing with your woodland, if it's, whether it be as a tree farm or as something else, because a lot of our people have no idea what goes on in the woodland areas. And that's part of what this whole deal is about, is learning about areas outside of Portland or Beaverton or wherever. So we would like to share some knowledge there. Let's go on to the next one. So here are the information sources. For what is orienteering, there are a couple of things that are really good to go to. One is a video, which is quite good. And the other, if you just want to read, there's a text article put out by my club. For orienteering organizations, you can find our website at croc.org. You can also find the US organization at orienteeringusa.org, and the International Orienteering Federation, which is orienteering.sport. And I included 2 environmental studies. I'm sure we can get others as well. There was one done in the United States. I haven't been able to find that yet. So with that, I'll turn it over to questions if you have any.
Super. Excellent, Tony. Glad we were able to get that working. I have one for you, and you kind of hit it on your point there about tying in with what's happening on the woodland. So everyone turn your cameras back on if you would. It seemed to me, my organization, it's all about educating Oregonians about forestry. And so when I see 30, 60, 100 orienteers coming out to a tree farm, I think, what an opportunity to teach them. So that's something that I think would be real interesting. And I think OSWA at the state level and the chapter level, and certainly OFRI might be very interested in getting involved in that. So just an idea for you all moving forward. So that's not really my question. That's just a aha. My question is, you're gathering a lot of information with maps and LiDAR. And I know landowners love to have information about their property for management planning. So is there a way that what you gather could be made available to the landowner also?
Oh, yes. You get a copy of the map. That's your land. We figure you should have a copy of the map. And if nothing else, you should see what it is that we've put on there, because there might be something of concern. So yes, you get a copy of the map. The other thing, what you mentioned earlier, one thing I'm trying to do is to build up within our club certain things with the membership. And one of them is a service to organizations. The club I came from, we used to volunteer with a number of the regional parks to help build trails. And that's where I got some trail building experience. We also did some tree planting for some of the regional parks and such. So I'm looking to get people out, not just to orienteer, not just to exploit the land, but to build on it. and to build relationships. So, you know, we can help, we can volunteer as well. I don't know how many people we'll get. You'll certainly get me, because I love just coming out and just exploring and learning about places.
Good. Sounds to me like an opportunity, Barrett, as you guys get ready for the big work day on Amy's Trail.
I've already copied his name down.
All right. Other questions for Tony?
Hey, Tony.
Go ahead, Barrett.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Vic. I'll follow you.
All right. I was just wondering, Tony, if these, well, two kind of questions. One is people that are participating in these events, like what else, other than the LiDAR map, what else do they use to sort of navigate the course? And secondly, are these events open to the public, or do you have to be in a club?
Okay, so during the COVID era, we've had to require people to join the club, but typically our events are open to everybody. And we're at a point now where things have changed with the COVID restrictions so that we can lift the club membership. But we do make the club membership very easy for people to join. In fact, that we've had this requirement for people to join the club, and suddenly our membership has, you know, gone up like 25% because people want to go orienteering, so they join. But we do typically we open it for everybody to go to the events, and we encourage anyone to come. You can do it alone, or you can do it as a family, or as a couple, or as friends. So teams are allowed, singles are allowed. The real competition is with the singles, but I would say more than half the people are really not into the competition. They're into just an incredible adventure that they'll never forget. A lot of people go hiking on trails and they see just what you see from the trail. But with orienteering, you see some of the stuff on the trail, but especially as you get into the more advanced levels, all of a sudden you see parts of the park you would never see otherwise. And it's an incredible adventure. As for what people use, basically you get a compass. It's either attached to your thumb or you just hold it, or it's around your neck. And you're given a map when you start. Typically, there's one type of event that we do where you get to look at the map for like 5 minutes ahead of time and work out a strategy. But typically, the buzzer goes off, you start, you reach down, you pull up your map, and that's when you see it for the first time, and you see your course. And the events, just to go one step further on this, the beginner courses are typically, as the crow flies, they're about 3 kilometers. But the advanced courses go from 4 or 5 kilometers to 10 kilometers. And that's just as the crow flies. And the more you get into the advanced courses, you're not running on trails, you're scrambling over logs, you're working your way over boulders, you're trying to find your way, you know, through the forest, going over a lot of slash, you name it. So it's not a 10K race. It's you dealing with nature more than anything else. And for a lot of us, it's a true sport, because you're really not so much competing with other people. You're competing with yourself, dealing with nature.
Cool. Sounds fun. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Boy, you know, I can attest, I mean, just from my layout work, that it is an outstanding full body workout. It is, and it's only as, you know, torturous as you make it, but I mean, it's great exercise. I can only imagine. I love hearing about different subcultures. There are a million of them, and this is just awesome to hear about, Anthony, Tony. I get a sense of trail ethic we call it in the trail world, we design trails for the type of user, and there are different trail ethics and different outdoor ethics that you design around. For example, longer loop backcountry experiences, we have a better trail ethic. And this group sounds like they're very attuned to being invisible to the environment and having a really strong natural ethic. So I feel pretty good about having this kind of crowd on my property without trashing the place, is kind of what I mean to say.
And if you would, if you want to be sure, for any of you, come to one of our events, and just see how it's run before anything is done with your property. We typically have something, what I call supervised events, where we have a start-finish area once or twice a month. But I'm also developing a lot of practice events where people can just show up and, this is the other thing, they can use a smartphone with a GPS on it, and it will let you know when you've reached a control site. We won't even have a flag there. There would just be a boulder, and you're looking for a boulder. Once you get there, all of a sudden a little tune is played. So it's basically sort of an invisible sport at that point. And the practice events, people just show up whenever they like. They can go out and do the course, and they get off, and we've left no trace, basically. And sometimes we do it in places such as Hoyt Arboretum, where people have to stay on the trails. And so we tell people, stay on the trails. This is not a competition. This is just navigation exercise. And when they arrive at a certain point, all of a sudden a tune is played. And when they finish, they get a fanfare on their phone. So yeah, there are a lot of different ways that we can do this. Mountain biking is another way, and that's done strictly on trails. I haven't seen one of those events yet, but we do have 2 women in the club who are part of the US team. And they tell me, yes, it has to be strictly on trails so that they're not creating new trails, which is a big problem with mountain bikes. They just have to find a place that has a real big trail network, actually, in that case. But yeah, we try to be really good and ethical about the use of the woods. The trails, yes, but even when people go off trail, there are areas that we have to be careful of. There's one time I was at an event in Colorado, and the whole mountainside was off limits because eagles were nesting in that area. So we had tape around that whole area. Stay out of it. So those are pretty important things for us.
Oh, great. This thing with the GPS and the tunes, my grandson and his friends play a game like that with Pokemon. It's really popular, and I think it could be a good combo. So the other question I have is, you talked about insurance, Tony. Is there a release of liability that the club signs from the woodland? Say I'm out there doing this and I break my leg. Do I get to sue you, or do I get to sue John and Kathy?
So everybody has to sign the waiver, and the insurance is supposed to cover everything. I hadn't seen it. I hadn't seen the actual insurance until I asked my event person to show me a copy yesterday. And it used to be for $1 million per event. Now it's $2 million. I guess it goes up to 5 million for something, and I forget the details on that. The per incident medical is like $5,000. And we can certainly go into more details, and we can put you in contact with people who can give you more details and understand the insurance really well. So that isn't a problem. We can do that.
I'll just to throw in a point here, Tony, I don't know if you're aware of, or maybe anybody listening in, is I know legally it seems like you are more obligated, you're more kind of vulnerable when you accept a fee, as opposed to not accepting any financial compensation for activity on your property. So if you have an event and you don't accept any financial compensation inside of Oregon state law, it releases you from a bunch of liability as well.
Well, that's an interesting point. I'll have to look into that. Now, it turns out that the Wenzel farm that we use, the landowner is actually an orienteer. And he does have us use it for free. But, we can discuss what is needed and go over the legal implications. I'd be interested in finding out more about that as well.
Yeah, no, Oregon has probably the best recreation immunity statute in the country. And I've worked on that legislation and defending it for years. And yeah, you are immune from negligence claims if you don't charge a fee. You're immune from negligence, all but gross negligence, willful intent to hurt somebody. So I know for our part on our farm, we might be inclined to offer access for free and just encourage a donation to Washington County Small Woodlands, or the Tillamook Forest Heritage Trust. There's a plug for you, a board I'm on. Yeah, that may be more rewarding for a landowner than the fee to use the land, and you have a tremendous amount of protection.
Yeah, protection is really valuable. Excellent points. Well, we're a little past time, but this has definitely been worth it. Mr. President, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you close us out. And also ask Mark if he has anything, since I can't do his body language. I have to ask him specifically if he has anything else to add as the leader of this program.
No, nothing to add, but just a thanks to both of our speakers. Appreciate your presentations. Thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you.
Take it away, Vic.
Yeah, that was
Sure
great.
thing.
And I'll just echo that from Mark, and just hope to see everybody at the Shoemakers in June 22nd.
All right.
Sounds great. And I'll in deference to Susan, my wife here, she shot me some funny looks. She wants me to say that if somebody wants to consult about trails, to just call me. I am supposed to be doing a little bit of that. So I'm not selling. But call me if you want.
Way to go, Susan.
Yeah, she's.
All right. Thank you all very much. Have a safe drive home, and see people in June at Bob and Bonnie's.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Thanks.